venture capitalists. There's first round coming from Philadelphia opening offices. Flybridge hired you, Boston based. So we'll talk about what are you doing for Flybridge?
Well, I'm technically an advisor to Flybridge, and what that means is, for the most part, is when it comes to New York investments, I'm both helping them source deals as well as due diligence on deals, and then on their investments, sort of help make connections. I think it's really something that I put. At the last New York Tech Meetup, I put Dream It Ventures up on stage to announce their new fund. I don't think we should be, I've been accused before of being a little chest pounding about the New York tech scene, but at the same time, I don't think it's bad to have competition or more investors in New York looking at New York companies and focusing here. In fact, I think it's a really good thing for the ecosystem, with the full disclaimer that I'm being paid to say that, right? We're not paid, but obviously I have skin in the game here. But no,
at the same time, the reason the Valley is so successful is because there's an ecosystem, and the idea behind the community here is build the same kind of ecosystem.
And here's the thing:
you have to support.
Part of the ecosystem is diversity, and the thing that really excited me at first, besides once I met the Flybridge guys, they're all just top tier guys. They're just great people. Everybody involved in the firm, and I vetted their intention. I made sure to talk to Union Square Ventures about their co-investment with them, and I made sure to talk to Dwight Merriman, and a number of the Flybridge guys were at Greylock, which backed DoubleClick. So I vetted. Something that excited me, besides the fact of who they were as people, was the fact that they were doing investments outside of New York that don't look like New York investments. In that they, as a Boston VC firm versus a New York VC firm, they're investing in medical devices, and they're still doing semiconductors, still innovation in semiconductors. There's all these technologies that New York isn't necessarily strong in, and therefore New York-centric VCs aren't focused in. Where so when you plug in a VC from outside the area, you're getting all sorts of intellectual capital that you wouldn't have in this ecosystem anyway. So first round capital goes the same for them. They are more plugged in to what's happening in the Valley than any other, I think, VC firm that's operating in New York City. Yep. And so they are, they're bringing in all sorts of intellectual capital from Josh and Chris's and Howard's experiences outside of New York, and we're better off for it. So that diversity and those outside agents, these agents that operate primarily in other ecosystems with different components in them, are hugely, I think, additive to what we do. And having them here is really good.
So the whole idea here is to promote the ecosystem, and so for those who are outside of the community wanting to break in and get involved, what would your advice be?
Well, people, of course, I tell people to come to the New York Tech Meetup every month, but I actually tell them that's sort of your staple. That's your daily vitamin, I guess. But you got to do more than that. There was a time not too long ago that I knew nobody in this industry, and where I found the most amount of value were like all the niche, smaller events that are going on, the smaller groups, the more focused ones. Those were the places where I would go and I'd meet one or two people in these smaller settings where it was easier to do so that when I did show up to New York Tech Meetup, I could leverage those connections to, that was the best way to leverage the crowd of, at the time, 400 or 200 to 300, right? Walking into a room of that size is pretty intimidating, even for sort of outgoing people like most entrepreneurs. So I suggest people go on garysguide.org, subscribe to Startup Digest or Charlie O'Donnell's weekly email blast, and pick out some of the smaller meetups. Whether it's the Video 2.0 meetup if you're into video, or the Fashion 2.0, or the Gaming 2.0. meetup, or Tech Aviv if you are into Israeli startups, because there's obviously just like there's a different profile for Boston companies, there's a different profile for Israeli companies that operate in New York City, right? We're more interested in sort of computer vision and advanced algorithms than amazing interfaces. So I would just think about the different niches that you're most interested in, where you might find it's sort of like dating, right? You want to go hang out at the bars and the cafes where you think you're going to meet the most compatible person. And then take that, then come to the New York Tech Meetup, and you'll feel like you're more at home, and you can better enjoy the sort of grand scale of the New York Tech Meetup.
Ken, the last question, what's the goal for the meetup? Do you want to grow it? Can it get any bigger? Is there anybody that can house it?
Yeah, so we're growing. It's a hard thing to strike a balance, right? I think that the goal of the New York Tech Meetup is to advance the New York technology industry for its people in the world. The goal of the New York Tech Meetup is not to have more members or explicitly, or to provide more programs. One of the beauties, I think, of the organization is that everybody involved is doing it on an entirely pro bono basis, and I think everybody involved is doing it from a pretty legitimately good spot in their heart, that they really care about this industry, and they find that this is a good way to put that into action. So, how do we advance the New York technology industry? Well, I think that one way is to play sort of partner to all the other people who do have ongoing initiatives. I'm very interested in so outside the monthly event, which we'll continue to do, and we're actually going to move to this summer. We're going to move to the Skirball Theater at NYU, so right down the street from here. Which will now host over 850 people. And after that, I think it's Madison Square Garden, right?
Nice.
No, I think we'll be fine at Skirball. It's a beautiful theater. So I don't know if you want to even you want to always accommodate everybody. You hate to turn people away, but at the same time, it gets very big. So what we're going to do in the background, we're going to leverage the community to support niche communities. So, for instance, the education space is really important to me right now, and other members of the organization. We feel like that there's something that we can do to help be sort of connective tissue among all the people in the university system, as well as the startup ecosystem. Columbia and NYU already have amazing infrastructure for doing that, whether it's a Columbia Venture Network or it's sort of complement at NYU, but there's still a lot of things going on at Pace and at stuff that was going on at Poly, which is now slowly getting wrapped into NYU. Stuff at Fordham, Stevens, even Yale, and I ran into a student from Yale that was just at the Tech Meetup because it's just close enough. And so I think that we can sort of fill in gaps where other people aren't providing services or aren't actively getting startups into research labs or students' internships into startups. One thing I'd really like to explore is providing a scholarship for people to come to and study at universities in New York City and be a part of the startup community while they are in school. And that's sort of my long-term dream. And I think New York Tech Meetup, because of its scale and because of the passion in its community, is better suited. And it's sort of, again, everyone involved, their only platform is really to advance the community. It doesn't write checks for anybody. Yeah. And so that means that we can really play this sort of dispassionate sort of middle for all the different people involved in the community. And so that's really the goal, is to leverage this to move the needle in areas like education, research that New York could use.
That's great. Yeah, we could go on forever.
Yeah.
I'll have to bring you back again some other time.
Yeah,
so thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.